Hey everyone! Sorry for the long absence, as I've had plenty of things going on in my life to keep me busy, but I'm glad to be back with you all again. So, Hideo Kojima's name has certainly come up a lot these past few weeks, no doubt due to the interest in his most recent title, Death Stranding. And as we all know, his fame mostly came out of his successful Metal Gear franchise, which we've all come to know over the years. This video is here to focus on a title that doesn't get talked about quite as often. The first, Zone of Enders. While Kojima did not develop or direct this game, he did serve as its producer, and as such oversaw its development. Although it was not a launch title, this game did come out pretty early in the PlayStation 2's life cycle, and got a lot of people's curiosity running, what with the included Metal Gear Solid 2 demo and all. But believe it or not, I first picked up this game because I was actually interested in the game! For years, I had been hoping we'd see a 3D mech game in the style of Mobile Suit Gundam, or one of my other favorite giant robot franchises at the time, and this appeared to be the closest thing to it. There was also an HD re-release of these games on both the PS3 and the 360. The PS3 version also came with a new demo for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which I thought was a nice little nod. Deciding on which version of the game to use for this video was tough. I played through both games in their entirety in order to figure this out, and finally ended up going with the PS2 version. Why? The frame rate. While the PS3 version no doubt looked nicer on HD TVs, it had constant frame rate drops that would prevent me from enjoying the game the way that I remembered it. Funny enough, the second game, Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner, did get a patch, at least on PS3, fixing many of the frame rate drop issues, but the first game, sadly, didn't get such treatment, and was left out in the cold. My decision was pretty much made. While I had fond memories of it for the gameplay, and some story developments in the latter half, I did remember having a few issues with it as well, and thought that now would be a great time to revisit it. So with that said, let's dive in, and see just how well Zone of the Enders for the PlayStation 2 holds up today. Released in March of 2001, Zone of the Enders is an action game, featuring a mix of both shooter and hack-and-slash control schemes. It also has some RPG-like elements, including the ability to level up and equip new weapons that you acquire. You play as Leo Stenbock, a lonely and unfortunate boy caught up in a power struggle on a Jupiter colony, after a team known as Barom sets out to claim powerful machines known as orbital frames. After witnessing the death of his quote-unquote friends, Leo comes across an orbital frame himself. The frame's computer, simply known as Ada, directs Leo on how to pilot it, and we learn the frame's name is Jehuti. We also learn about some members of Barom's forces, particularly Viola, the team's officer, with quite the tragic past, and Noman, the leader behind the whole operation. From there, we start to slowly pick up on the game's controls and Jehuti's various abilities. The orbital frame can move at lightning-quick speeds, with bursts to make it dash even faster for fighting and avoiding enemies. At close range, Jehuti can slice enemies with a blade on its arm, perform a dash strike, and even use a spinning attack. From farther away, Jehuti can perform ranged attacks, like firing regular shots, shooting various particle beams after dashing, and even charging up and firing a large energy ball. On top of this, you can also use a shield with the R1 button. The triangle and X buttons raise or lower your altitude, so the enemies never get too far away. This can be a bit much to understand all at once, but thankfully, the game does a good job of guiding you through it all with its helpful training mode. On top of all these abilities, combat is fast and frantic, making every encounter a joy to zip through, whether large or small. Sometimes enemies will block your slashes, and Leo may get a small window of opportunity to rush in with another quick slash to knock them back. Watching moves like this in motion is just plain satisfying, and I never got tired of it once during my multiple playthroughs. There are also multiple boss fights, which consist of mostly large and fast enemies. While I never found any of them to be particularly difficult, even on the highest of difficulties, they were still very fast-paced and exciting. Each one ended up sticking with me and highlighting some of the game's highest points. As is anything that's ever had Kojima's name attached to it, the game has a large amount of cutscenes in between stages and other objectives. Some of these are in FMV format, while a great deal of them actually occur from Jehuti's cockpit. Oh my god, they meant cockpit, literally. Oh my god. While I wouldn't call anything about this game's story particularly unique, as it resembles and even rehashes multiple anime plotlines that we've all seen and heard before, it is at the very least serviceable and helps in moving things along. To be honest, I found myself much more interested in Viola's backstory than anyone else in this game. While we don't get much information about her here, the anime tie-in movie, Zone of the Enders Idolo, helps in filling in a lot of those blanks. It's funny, when I was younger, I used to identify with Leo's point of view in a lot of ways, but coming back to it years later, I can't stand him. Do we really need yet another Get in the Robot Shinji, Amuro, Camille situation? Ugh.
The target has disappeared. I can detect no sign of vital activity.
You mean that everyone is dead?
That is correct. Good work, sir.
Still, it did help us learn about and even sympathize with Leo on many occasions, as it's true that he never asked to be any part of this war, just like the other anime characters I mentioned, and he did get the job done in the end. While the soundtrack didn't come to blow me away or anything, I did find it to fit the pacing of the gameplay and combat quite well, which is all I really could have asked for.
Here's another one.
While the graphics are not the smoothest thing you'll ever see, at least now, they were still shockingly good for their time. In fact, to this very day, I don't think I've ever been quite as impressed by a game's particle effects before. They're just that good. As much as I used to love playing and replaying this game, I can't pretend it was all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, I found some aspects of this game to be quite painful, and I'm pretty sure the only reason I forgot this was because I used to drown out the bad with the good, and reload saves from all my favorite sections again and again. So let me elaborate on what I'm referring to here. Overall, I felt that the game had a pretty strong beginning, and a very fun and interesting last third or so, but that still leaves a large portion of the game I haven't talked about. Well, between the first and second boss fights, this game seems hellbent on keeping you from moving forward. First, the game blocks your way once you reach a tower you need to disable with a sniper rifle. In order to get the rifle, you have to backtrack to another stage and fight for the passcode. Then you can finally return to shoot it down. Next, it places you in a scenario where you have to disable 2 satellite towers. The game only gives you some vague ideas about where to go next, requiring you to backtrack and revisit multiple stages until you find the items you need. This involves learning a new ability to take control of an enemy raptor so it can enter and destroy one of the satellite's generators. And it just keeps going. Next, you encounter the second boss, but can't fight him yet because a virus was placed on Ada that causes you to die in one hit. So now you have to backtrack once again until you come across the passcode for the antivirus program. And once more to find a decoy weapon to stop his one-hit kill attack. Then, and only then, are you finally able to defeat the boss and move on with your life. I just wanted to move the story along here. That said, I at least understand where this artificial game length came from. The title is pretty short, even with these backtracking and filler segments. I believe it will take most gamers less than 6 hours to get through, and that alone can be enough to dissuade some from even trying it in the first place. And then there's the SOS missions. While these are technically optional, they are factored into your overall game ranking. If you're playing the game on the PS3 and trying to get all of the game's trophies, like I painstakingly did, yes, I'm still a little bitter about it, then you're going to have a heck of a time with this. Why? Well, your ranking in these missions is based on a couple of factors. The first is how much damage is done to the area around you. The second is civilians. If any of these areas marked on the map with survivors in them are destroyed, then it counts against your ranking. You have to take out all the enemies while ensuring nothing else gets destroyed. Simple, right? If only. Your success in these missions is determined more by luck than anything else, as you'll come to see by the 10th time you reload the same save file. Yes, sometimes enemies will blow up civilians in a part of the map you were nowhere near, with no physically possible way to stop it. Oh, and it gets even worse. The second SOS mission can be especially nasty. That first boss fight you encountered earlier? Well, I hope it didn't destroy too many buildings when you fought it, because all that damage gets factored into your overall percentage later on, even after leaving and coming back. Oh, what's that? You didn't know since the game didn't tell you? Oh well, time to reload that save again. Finally. Surely that'll get me an A rank, right?
Mission accomplished. I will report damage to neighboring areas from this battle. There are a few damaged buildings. No casualties.
You did it!
Don't ask me how I eventually got this platinum trophy. I couldn't even tell you. I just remember being really, really mad about it. Now, again, I want to emphasize that outside of this annoying middle section of the game, I found the beginning and final third of the game to be pretty fun and well worth the trip, even if some over-the-top anime tropes were out in full force here.
What you did to save me was very illogical.
The final fights with Viola proved to be pretty eventful and fun, as well as a joy to look at. Moments like this were what captivated me, and made me feel like I was getting the closest thing to a real Gundam experience. And we still need to talk about that final section. Yes, just when you think it's all over, Nomen arrives completely out of nowhere with his new orbital frame Anubis. Instead of offering any kind of comfort, Ada only has some strange cryptic words to throw at you.
That frame is another genitive. You two are not destined to meet yet.
This section is followed by Nomen completely decimating you, to the point where it's not even possible to get a single hit in. The image of Anubis staring down at me while getting ready to finish me off still sticks with me to this day. Although the game still has a quote-unquote real ending, there are many threads left open, such as Barum still being a major threat, Anubis at large, Jehuti's overall plan to self-destruct on Mars, and other situations that we'd come to follow up on in the inevitable sequel. I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a bit of a hard sell for some people. The core gameplay is still excellent to this day. The boss fights were great, the story was overall enjoyable, and the experience as a whole was well worth it to me. But it had terrible pacing between the first and second boss fights, excruciating SOS missions, anime tropes galore, some confusing voice acting, and an extremely short campaign with very little replay value to it, outside of trying to get a higher ranking. Part of the enjoyment I got from this when I was younger was actually replaying all of the boss fights and stages after the fillery sections. I will say that if you are a fan of the superior sequel, Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner, I believe it is worth playing this title at least once, as there are plenty of major plot details you would otherwise be missing out on, that help make the Second Runner all the more enjoyable. For everyone else, it may not blow people away quite as much as it did back when it first came out. I still love those particle effects though. You can't tell me that's not still impressive today. So there you have it. For me, it was quite an enjoyable game with a lot of great ideas going for it, but still heavily flawed, and the test of time admittedly has not been quite as kind to it as it was to its sequel. Still, this was an impressive feat for its time, and I believe it is still essential for fans of the giant robot genre to try out at least once, as I believe these two games, the sequel especially, which I hope to cover in a future video, still hold some of the better mech gameplay out there, regardless of other issues. And that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this game in the comments below, and I will see you all again real soon.